The nuclear family is a shit idea. A little while ago I saw a social media post by one of those right-wing comedians that are cropping up everywhere these days. The ones that spout their reactionary nonsense in a way that's about as funny as the average canal. I identify as an attack helicopter. It's like they've only got about 8 ideas between them and they only use 2 of them. Sometimes I think social media is a good idea. Not that often. And also sometimes I think I should just exercise half of my body so that I can convince people I'm a sort of Frankenstein's monster made up of contrasting body parts. Oh yeah, this arm was a bodybuilder who got so big he died because he couldn't get out of the gym. Yeah, he just lived there off energy drinks and that, and eventually he died. So my ideas aren't, always worth listening to. Most of the time, I think that social media is the worst wrong turning in modern human history, has wasted a massive chunk of our lives and has made a fascist president of the United States. But another reason I think social media is fucking terrible is I was on social media when I read a comment by a right-wing comedian that said that the Black Lives Matter movement was aiming to destroy the nuclear family. Now, I didn't know that, but if anything, that makes me like the Black Lives Matter movement more, because the nuclear family is a shit idea, born out of a capitalist industrialist model of society that was relevant for perhaps 150 years out of our 200,000 years of human evolution. It's about as natural as glow-in-the-dark crisps and was the prevailing norm for about as long as bustles. I was genuinely amused and quite baffled to hear someone in 2020 defend the nuclear family. It was such a sort of bewildering anachronism. I felt I needed to run onto the street and demand of someone, "What year is this? Who's the president?" It's like steampunk. Now, I may have been a bit too immersed in it to be objective, but how come the steampunk aesthetic looks dated? How can something that's supposed to be a combination of the Victorian era and the future look so exactly like 2007? The nuclear family is isolating. It incubates domestic violence, homophobia, transphobia, and it completely fails to take into account the reality of human relationships. It's just not the best way to raise a child. Philip Larkin nailed it when he said, "They fuck you up, your mum and dad. They may not mean to, but they do." When did "it takes a village to raise a child" stop being relevant? It takes a village to raise a child, but industrialisation and capitalism severed the roots of community that provided a much wider, solid and more varied base for children to be raised, something that offered checks and balances to the deficiencies of parents. But the nuclear family is valuable to capitalism because it means that small units can be economically mobile, and it also means that it breaks society down into more households. If you have not a community but a series of small households, you can sell them more fridges, more lawnmowers, more hairdryers. We've all had experiences that give the lie to the ideal of the nuclear family. You ever seen a kid with shit parents? A little 3-year-old with a shaved head and an earring called Tyler being fed Lucozade and Mars bars and glued to a screen? Or, perhaps worse, a middle-class child called Autumn who's definitely not getting vaccinated. Communities that preceded the nuclear family for, all of human fucking evolution are a much, much better way to raise a child, a much better standard for society, a much better base level for us to organise our lives. The main subject of ire for the reactionaries that still, bafflingly in 2020, defend the nuclear family is trans people. Oh, well, children are going to be brought up by 3 aunties, one of whom used to be a man. Well, that actually sounds pretty wicked. That's a broad skill set right there. Quite frankly, anything that disrupts the toxic emphasis on straightness that fucked up me and countless others when we were kids is entirely a good thing. It's better for a straight kid to be raised by a big queer family than a queer kid to be raised by 2 aggressive homophobes. And it's better for a child's development to have a range of role models, including fluid gender roles, than suffer the constrictions of the religion or reactionary politics of the cunts who value the nuclear family. So here's to the aunties and uncles and neighbours and grandparents and friends and polyamorous lovers who are giving kids a broad and rich and diverse and loving home. And here's a fuck you to the idea of a mobile industrial wealth acquiring unit that's had its day, like a fidget spinner in a museum. If you enjoy these walk and talk opinion pieces that I've been doing, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Patreon is the way that me and artists like me are making money, making a living, putting food on the table, and in my case, looking after a kid. You can sign up for as little as £1 a month. I charge by thing I create, which gives me a kick up the arse to make more, and it means that I can make content, to use a horrible phrase, that is entirely uncompromised. I make what I want to make, and hopefully I make what you want me to make. So have a look at my Patreon. I'm going to put the link down there, and support me, Andrew O'Neill, in my quest to make the world exactly how I want it to be.